Yeah, I just did. So we're live, and it's recording. So this is going to be on YouTube after. So I think Alex, there's lots of background noise. So
Oh yeah, sorry.
do you mind if I mute you?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I'll do it. Yeah.
It's okay. So if you want to participate at any point, just unmute yourself and ask a question or anything. And same with Richie. Like I think we lost you, but if you wanna. If anybody wants to join the Hangout, the link is in the chat room, and feel free to join or ask questions on Crowdcast. So the goal of this Hangout is to go over the upcoming changes in Telescope, because I've been working on a pretty big refactor over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. And so, this will impact Telescope in general, but also for anybody who has themed it or customized it, it's good to know what's going to be different. And there will be quite a few different. So, I apologize in advance, but that's going to mean you'll probably need to change your some of your code. Hey, Jared, the upcoming changes in Telescope, because I've been working on a pretty big refactor over the last. Jared, if you're gonna join the Hangout, can you mute or turn off the video? Because otherwise it got this looping thing. Or if you just mute yourself, it's fine too. So I'm gonna share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so so this is the most recent Telescope code base. And so if you're familiar with Meteor, the first thing you'll notice is that there's not actually any app code in there. So there's no client folder or server or lib. And just for as a comparison, sorry, I'm just going to bring up the current Telescope repo. So this is like the structure of a standard Meteor app. So you have client collections. Each folder has code in it. In the new branch, which you can actually look at right now, it's called namespace 2. So all this is gone, and the entirety of Telescope's code now lives in the packages directory. So right now, all these packages are, I guess, local, you could say. So they're, if you clone this repo, it will run these packages from your local copy. But the idea is when people will use Telescope as end users, all these packages will be loaded from Atmosphere. So their packages folder will actually be empty, except for maybe whatever customizations they might have done. So the idea here is to make Telescope a lot easier to install. Because currently, the process is you have to take this URL, clone it locally. So that means understanding how Git works, and then only then can you run Telescope. With the new package-based organization, you don't actually need any of that repo. You can just use Meteor add and then the name of the various Telescope packages. So Meteor add Telescope core, Meteor add Telescope posts, and so on. And the other thing we want to do as well is come out with a really simple command line utility that will do all of that for you if you just type something like Telescope create and then the name of your app. So behind the scenes, it will just do Meteor add and then add all the various Telescope packages, which, sorry, you can see here. Yeah. So yeah, the whole goal is to make it much, much easier to get started with Telescope and drop the requirement that you have to know Git, because that's actually, while Git is super useful, that's actually still a big barrier for a lot of people who just want to get the app up and running. So yeah, speaking of packages, this is the list. We'll take a look at the packages file. And by the way, like let me know in the chat if I'm going too fast or too slow, or if you can't see the video or something. You know, I'll check it from time to time. Although I should probably not do that because it's a really weird effect. So back to the code. This is the new packages file. So let's compare with the previous one. I think that's interesting. So this is the previous or current package file for Telescope, and it looks pretty standard. So you have a bunch of third-party packages here. Or sorry, those are like Meteor packages. And then you have a whole bunch of third-party packages from Meteor Hacks. You have Autoform, Iron Router. Then you have your Telescope packages. And finally, any custom packages that you might have created. So as you can see, the new package file is much simpler. You don't have any Meteor packages, and you also don't have any third-party packages. All that's left is a single core package, and then all these optional Telescope packages. And again, a section for your own custom packages if you have any. So how does it work? Well, this core package right here is pretty special. So we'll look at it. And what it does, so first of all, I should mention that all these packages all depend on core. So they all have a single dependency. Like if we check the pages package, the dependency tree is really simple. It's just Telescope core, and that's it. Again, if you compare with how it worked before you had to specify like, oh, this package uses Autoform, this package uses Iron Router. It was a pain. Now there's a single dependency, so it's so much better. So how does it work? Well, this is the core packages package.js file. And you can see it uses a bunch of packages, and then it also implies these same packages. So API.imply is something I wasn't really aware of before, but it's actually super useful. And what it does is, so first of all, API.use will take a package and make it available to the current package. So if I want to use Iron Router in my core package, I would do API.use and then Iron Router. Now, API.imply takes a package and then makes it available to any package that's using the current package. So what this means is if I'm implying Telescope lib in core, any package that uses core, so the current package, will also be able to use, like implicitly use Telescope lib. So this is how we're able to only have a single dependency here, right? Because implicitly we're passing all the stuff that's inside these packages to the pages package in this case. So that's a really cool feature, and it simplifies the package dependency tree a lot. And I actually take this one step further. So you can see that core depends on lib, and lib depends on all the first party, so Meteor and third party packages that we might need, and then in turn implies them to make them available to core, and then in turn to all the other packages. So what this basically means is that we add something like Autoform once in here, and it's available to any package that depends on core. So yeah, we have the benefits of using the package organization, because we can control load order, we can add and remove part of the app on demand, but we don't have that downside where usually you need to specify dependencies for every package individually, and it's kind of very cumbersome. So it's kind of a nice approach. And of course, like Meteor is smart enough to know that if 3 packages depend on Autoform, it's not gonna include that code 3 times. So I don't think there's any performance issue here in doing that. So what else? So as I mentioned, core, this is kind of the required packages, the one you need to run Telescope. So there's lib, which stores a lot of common functions, messages for error messages, IATN for internationalization, events. So this one is pretty new and it's not super developed, but it's basically going to help with event tracking and analytics and all of that. Settings, and then users, comments, and posts. So it would be cool actually if comments and maybe even posts were optional. So if you could really have a super bare bones app, but right now they're kind of built in. So this is something we'll work on as we go, like making more and more of the app modular and optional. So that about covers it for packages. Let me switch back to the chat room to see if there's any questions about all of this. API imply is great. I agree. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like it was kind of tricky to understand how it works exactly, but it's actually not that complex and really useful. Okay, so are there any questions? Oh, okay. Yeah, one question was from Seth. Would like to better understand integration with existing Meteor apps with account login signup already integrated. So this goes back to what I was talking about with like splitting up packages a bit more. So first of all, by making Telescope entirely comprised of packages, you're now able to just do Meteor add Telescope core to any existing Meteor app and add Telescope. The thing is, it won't quite work out of the box because Telescope does include things like navigation menus, for example. So you probably have your own navigation and layout that you don't want to override. So these things are kind of still built in the core. So ideally, we would remove them. Same with user accounts. Right now, user accounts are built into core. So that's a bit trickier because it is pretty core to any app, but I would be open to finding a way to, like, if you already have your own user account system, you can just drop Telescope's user accounts and it will play nice with what you already have. So right now it's not, it's not seamless. It doesn't work out of the box, but down the road, that's definitely something we want to do. Other question, by splitting Telescope into a collection of packages, do you think it makes it easier to test? Definitely, yeah, for sure. First of all, like, I think, it becomes easier to tell somebody, oh, go write some tests for the pages package, and you know that all functionality is self-contained in there. And in fact, I've started doing that. So I'll start sharing my screen again. So let's say the posts package. So I've created this tests.md file. It's just markdown, but I've started writing down the different operations that will need to be tested later on. So it's kind of like a very simple way to set up a testing skeleton, I guess. So okay, so that was the first part about the kind of the overall architecture. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the specific changes. And so let's go back to the current version. So this is the base package, and the base package is kind of the package that contained all the various variables and objects and and whatever, everything we use in Telescope. And as you can see, they're all like on the global namespace, which obviously is not a super good idea. So one of the big goals of this refactor was namespacing everything. So we can look at the new so lib file, and as you can see, there's like a root Telescope namespace that will contain most things. And then these are just leftover that we'll also get rid of eventually. So if we go to utils, like everything is namespaced on Telescope, which makes for a much cleaner code base. Now, obviously, this also means that if you were using any of these variables, which you probably are, it's not going to work anymore, and you'll have to adapt your code to the new syntax. But there's actually quite a few cool things. So for example, callbacks. So before, here's how callbacks used to work. Oh, that's the wrong file, sorry. Let's take the post submit method, for example. Yeah, so that's a good example. So we have a few server-side callbacks we want to run. So we test if we're on the server, and then if we are, we use defer. And then we take that global array and do a for each over it. If it's like a synchronous callback, we use reduce instead. And this kind of code was kind of repeated all over the app. It's not a very nice API. So I wanted to find a better way to do the same thing, basically. And so if you look at callbacks.js in the new code base, it's much simpler. We now have a register callback function and a run callbacks function. And it's a lot cleaner. So this is how we run a callback. Here, you just do telescope.callbacks.run, and then the name of the hook, whose callbacks you want to run. And you pass like the argument that's going to be iterated upon and then returned. And then if you want the same thing to run in asynchronous mode, you just pass true as the last argument. So first of all, this is much simpler, but also by using a method instead of doing like just array.push, it kind of lets us tweak the implementation of this whole thing behind the scenes later on if we want to, and then people won't have to change their code like in their custom packages. So that was also a big part of this whole refactor, is like kind of abstracting away the actual implementation of all these things and making the whole code base a lot more flexible. And same with if you want to like declare, like add a callback function to a hook. So this is how you would do it. You declare your function, and then you just register it and pass the name of the hook. So again, it's really simple. And a small detail here, I use this syntax. So usually we use anonymous functions, so we would do something like var after post submit operations equal function post, and that declares an anonymous function. So the function itself doesn't know its own name. On the other hand, if you use this syntax, so with the function keyword first, the function will know that it's named after post submit operations, and inside. So if you pass this as an argument, you can then do like function.name, and that will give you its own name. So that's pretty useful for any kind of callbacks stuff, or whenever you're passing a function as argument, because it means you can find out the name of that function later on. So here we could do like a console.log callback.name, and we'll loop, like as it loop over every callback function, it would echo out the name, and we can kind of figure out where issues are coming from or can help us debug. So just a small tip, if you're ever like registering your own callbacks, use that syntax if you can. So that's for callbacks. What else? Well, first let me go back to the chat room and see if there are any questions. So, OK, one question, wouldn't you want to split those templates out of core and put them into their own packages? So which templates are we talking about, first of all? Maybe you can clarify that. Another question, what happened to the SEO package? So it was merged into core because I figure like everybody needs SEO, so it doesn't really need to be modular. Like, oh, I'm done answering that. Oh, what other components are inside Telescope Core that you feel are possible to pull out? That's a really good question. So if we look at Telescope Core, especially the templates, so the navigation form, I think, to be honest, all templates should probably be pulled out of Telescope Core, and Telescope Core should be kind of more of a wrapper around the necessary packages. You could make the argument that there should be no template at all in the core of Telescope. You should be able to use it, with your own templates. I don't know if that's a use case that people are interested in, but it's certainly like interesting to consider. So yeah, as you can see, the core kind of has a bunch of admin stuff, the navigation, a few menus. So those things could probably all be pulled out down the road. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that enters it. Yeah. So right now the navigation stuff is in core, but I agree it should be pulled out eventually. So we just did packages and callbacks. Another thing I want to show off is modules. So before we had this. Where is it? I'm trying to find the old packages file. Give me a second here. Okay, yeah. So before we had these module zones like, here, footer modules, hero modules, thread modules. And again, to add something to it, you would do hero modules.push and then push the template or something. So as with the callbacks, we now have register, remove, and get functions to register, remove, and get those modules. So it's much cleaner. You don't have to initialize the modules because if they don't exist, the function will do it for you. And then, yeah, it just makes the whole thing a lot easier to understand. And the APIs are also more logical and more stable. And the same principle applies to custom fields. So where is this? Yeah, before, if we wanted to add something to the post schema, we would push it to that array here. And that's also changed. And yeah, collections right here has this register field function on the prototype of meter.collection. So this means you can now do posts. Let me show you. You can do right here, post.registerField and then pass the property or field, I guess, you want to register, and this will add it to the post schema. The other cool thing, before you could only really extend posts. Now you can also extend the comments and users. So comments, for example, if you wanted to do a review site where you want people to leave a 5-star rating along with their comment, you can now do that. Because like all comments form, like comment submission, comment edition, they're generated using autoform. So the list of fields is not hard-coded anymore. So that's pretty cool. Same with users. It also uses quick form. So let's say you want your users to add like a city field or fill out their username or maybe even API keys. If you have some kind of integration with a third-party system, you can now add custom user fields, and they can add that right in their profile. So that's pretty cool, I think. Let's see if there are any more questions about all this. So I think if you took out all of the templates and gave out documentation how to integrate with it, it would probably make it easier for existing apps to add in parts of Telescope. Agreed. Also, it would make it easier to use React Meteor. Yeah, that would be, I want to see this. Yeah, I think for the future, it's definitely on the roadmap. But we also have to be realistic that the typical use case is still like running Telescope out of the box without any customization. So we should probably like still focus on that first. But yeah, it's a good idea. So moving on, another cool thing is the way Telescope now handles like field level permissions. And what I mean by that is that, for example, here on the posts schema, well, some fields are editable, like the URL should be editable, but some aren't. So the created at date or the score of the post, right? We don't want to let users change their own post score from 1 to 100 and then shoot up the rankings. So this is how we achieve that with this new editable by field, which is an array of the different roles that can edit the field. So admin is like an admin and member is just a regular user. So I didn't use the actual word user because I thought this would make it really hard to do any find and replace, if later on we want to change it. So at least member is kind of a more unique keyword. So how does this work? Well, it works in a couple places. So first of all, let me give you a quick primer on how Telescope handles like permissions. So there's this debate in the Meteor world between allow and deny and using Meteor methods. So to bring you up to speed, like, and by the way, in the chat room, sorry, feel free to chime in if you have comments on that. But allow and deny lets you set up permissions that are kind of passive in a way that kind of works on your whole collection. And then it will govern how you can call stuff like insert, update, and remove from the client. So that's kind of a weird concept in a way because, yeah, why would you want to let any user like modify your database? It's kind of a dangerous thing, and if you don't do it right, well, you expose yourself to big security issues. So, but the appeal is that, well, you can just define it once, and then from anywhere in your app, those permissions will apply. So whether it's like upvoting or submitting a new post or messing around with the browser console, all these operations will follow the same rules. So that's a very appealing concept in theory, but in practice, it just opens up a lot of issues. So that's why in Telescope, we use it very sparingly, and instead we have these Meteor methods. So what I mean in practice is that when we insert a new post, we're not saying like post.insert on the client and letting allow deny handle that. We're calling the submit post method. And then the method itself can decide what it wants to do. So an example of that is checking if the user is the owner of the post. Well, first, if the user has rights to post, and then if it owns the document. And before, like, I used to stop here, but then if you just check that, it still lets user modify disallowed properties on the documents that they do own. So you also need to check each field being modified individually, if that makes sense. And that's what we're doing right here with users.can_submit field. And we pass the current user and the field being modified. And then behind the scenes, that will in turn check this property on that field. So if member is authorized to modify the body field, then it will return true and the operation will go through. If that field happens to be like view count, it will return false and the operation will fail. So this is kind of a way to centralize permissions in one place and then reuse that from different points throughout the code base. Another example, earlier I was talking about how all the forms are generated using Alloform. And there's this fields attribute right here that can control which fields are shown. So like if you're a user, you're going to want to show like the title, URL, body fields. But if you're an admin, you show like a few extra fields, like the posted at field if you want to change the date, the user field if you want to assign the post to a different user. And again, we do that with a method called get editable fields that also checks back to this right here. And finally, I also use this in a third place. So earlier I was saying how allow, deny are kind of dangerous and you don't want to use them. But as a proof of concept, I decided to implement them using the same, checking back to the same editable back property. So I think that's actually a pretty, like as secure as it gets, because you know your allow deny is going to check back to central schema and not be kind of add an ad hoc method. So this allow check does the job of checking this property. So I can say that I have checked that many other Meteor apps, but I do think this is a pretty cool approach. At least from my work on Telescope, it's kind of the best approach I've found so far. I really like the idea of centralizing things in the schema because it makes it so much easier to reason about. You don't have to go look like, oh, which posts am I displaying here? Which fields am I displaying here? Do these fields match the ones that are actually editable? And so on. You know that it's going to be like, it's going to make sense. And in the future, I'd like to extend that to publications, for example. Because right now, all fields on the post object, so all of this, they're all public. They're all published to every client. But for other objects, it might not make sense. Like I was talking earlier about having custom user properties, such as maybe API keys. And obviously, you don't want those to be public. So we'll need a way to specify who a field should be published to. And right now, that's hard-coded. But in the future, we could imagine something like, publish to member admin, or just admins, or nobody, and so on. So there's actually a version of this already in the settings. Schema, yeah, private true. So that's exactly what it does. For example, I think the Cadira API key, right here, the Cadira secret, you obviously don't want that to be published to the client. So there's this option you can set so that this field is never published, but obviously it's still available from the server, so Cadira can still use it. So right now it's kind of an ad hoc approach where we have like it's basically a Boolean, so true or false, but in the future, maybe it might make sense to extend it to a more granular pattern. So one comment, we'll need to deal with permissions again if we implement secure API keys. So I don't know if what I just said right now addresses that, but yeah, like permissions is like a super important topic, and it's very easy to get it wrong. So I'm open to feedback on that. I kind of tried looking at what other frameworks were doing, like Rails, and then stuff like Devise or CanCan, but I'm not a big Rails guy, so maybe if other people can give me feedback about that, that would be helpful. Okay. What else is there? So this is kind of the main things. Other than that, so as I said, there were a lot of namespacing variables that have been changed. So that will probably trigger a lot of bugs. And I apologize in advance for that. Otherwise, no, the app hasn't changed that much. One thing that did change a little bit is how subscriptions work. So a while back, I wrote this blog post about template level subscriptions. So briefly speaking, like the basic pattern of managing subscriptions in the Meteor app is to handle them in the router. So in essence, like if you had a blog, if I type in this URL and I provide a slug, it would take that slug and send it down to the server, and in return, it will get that subscribe to the data that contains that blog post, for example. So it's kind of a one route equals one set of subscriptions model. But then if you have an app like Gmail, for example, well, you have this list of emails, and maybe each blog has its own set of data that it wants, that it's paginated independently. And in Telescope, like a very practical example is the daily view. So I don't know if Creator has the daily view. Yeah. Right, so each day, okay, they don't have each day has its own subscription, and although like there's no load more button here, you can see how when I click load more for April 29th, we don't want more posts to load for April 28th, and we also don't want the URL to change. So basically, all of these subscriptions are managed independently, and that's where template level subscriptions come in. And it's a pattern that I've started using in Telescope in a couple places. For example, so like I said, the daily view or the user profile. So again, you have like a list of all of users' posts, then just upvoted posts, downloaded posts, comments. All of these are template level subscriptions. And in the new version, I'm also using this for the main post lists. So before, post lists were managed through the router, but I've decided to kind of make things more consistent and put that at the template level as well. So the downside is like when you click load more, the URL doesn't change anymore. But I think it's kind of a minor thing, like, and I think it's worth it to have a more consistent code base, and especially because like subscriptions, I find are one of the most, like the hardest things to understand and the hardest thing to control in Meteor apps. So anything we can do to simplify them is pretty good. So practically speaking, this is how it works. So this is the posts package. So that the post list controller is now much simpler. There's no more wait on. So there's just data. All we do is return terms based on like the URL parameter. So when I said it doesn't use the URL parameter, you can still do. Okay, well, this should still work. It doesn't right now, but it should. But what happened is that it won't update when you click load more. So anyway, you define the terms. So the terms is the search terms that will be used to define what set of data we subscribe to and what set of data we query on. So there's a few templates for each views, which are very, very simple. And we can probably get rid of them down the road, but this was kind of a simple implementation. And then these templates called the post list controller template. So this is a kind of a two-step pattern for template level subscriptions, where you have one template that acts as a controller. So maybe you could call that like a view controller, maybe. And what it will do is define this context object here. And it will pass that context on to the component, which takes the context data and displays it. So in essence, the PostList here has very little logic. All it does is like take an object and display it. You could call it from the router. You can call it from another template like we're doing here. So it's a very flexible approach. And especially for something that's reused throughout the app, like a PostList, I think it makes sense. Now, the PostList controller is a lot more complex. Sadly, like there's just a lot of things in here that make it hard to keep that simple. I'm working on a blog post about that topic, by the way, kind of a follow-up to template-level subscriptions. And I might use a few of Tom Coleman's packages to simplify that a bit more. But yeah, it will just be complex, and hopefully it works, and you don't have to look into it too much. So I was talking about the router right now. One of the big issues with routing in Meteor right now is that routing is reactive. So Iron Router is reactive. And it's kind of cool in a way. Like, for example, here we're doing a session get search query. So as the search query updates, this will rerun, and we know that our terms will update as well. The problem here is that we don't have good control over when this reruns and how many times. And when you have something like that, well, you run the risk of having these auto-run blocks or these like this helper get called over and over again for every time the router reruns. So it's really inefficient, and it's really hard to control. So I've been thinking about switching away to a Flow Router, which is not reactive. So Flow Router, which is a project by Arunoda, the way it works, it will only run once, and then it won't. So there's a few downsides, like we probably couldn't do this. But at least you can like confine the reactivity to your template. And it's kind of easier to reason about because all the reactive stuff is like in one place. So this is kind of the direction we're going into. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that non-reactive routing is a better long-term pattern. But again, I'm happy to consider other views. So yeah, I think that's about it for now. Any questions? Like, if people want to join the Hangout, I'm going to paste the URL in the chat room real quick. You can ask your questions live. So it says 6 viewers. That's not a lot, but this will be recorded, and hopefully it will reach more people on YouTube. I guess the last thing is I wanted to talk a little bit about the next steps and the roadmap. Rishi is saying it probably makes it easier to develop in the future if you use Flow Router. Completely agree. All that's good. Yeah, I think Iron Router is awesome. Like, it's a huge accomplishment, but it's just too complex. I mean, it's kind of a victim of its own success, because the way even Telescope, it's the same thing. Like, it gets more popular and people submit pull requests and they ask for more features and they suggest more use cases, and they're all valid. So you want to add everything, and then it becomes this big bloated thing, and it's hard to reason about, and it's hard for other people to help you with it. So I really believe in keeping things small and modular. That's what I'm trying to do with Telescope, and I think Flow Router probably fits in a bit better with that approach. So yeah, the roadmap. So first of all, when is this thing coming out? So I'm hoping to get this to a workable state where everything kind of works in the next couple of days, and then maybe merge it to the develop branch next week, early next week. And then it will need a ton of testing. Like, I'm definitely not going to release this to the world until it's been really well tested and at least like 3 or 4 sites have converted to it and are running it in production. Because the conversion, the more you've customized your app, the more the conversion will be a little bit painful, I'm afraid. But I'll be around to help. I'll even try, like if I have the time, I'll try to clone the repos and submit PRs myself, like to CodeBuddies or any Creator or any of those sites. And then then I want to release that. So release that alongside with the command line utility, maybe. And that would kind of put us on the road to version 1.0, or at least like a pretty major next version. And I also want to release a redesign of the homepage at the same time. And I'm also working on setting up some partnerships for easier Telescope hosting and deployment. So I'm in talk with a company called Stratus 5 that does kind of white label hosting. And they have a really cool platform. So they might be able to provide us with like a one-click deploys for Telescope. And there's also another company called Scale & Go, also really cool guys based in France. And they've also agreed to work on one-click deploy. So I'm hoping one or the other kind of gives us a really easy way to deploy Telescope in the future, where it's basically just like a one big, huge button on the homepage. You click, deploy, and then you're good to go. So yeah, I mean, all of these things combined. Another one is a new documentation. So I've been porting over the current documentation to readme.io, which is a really cool platform for technical documentation. But I think I'll just have to rewrite everything from scratch, basically, because it's changed so much. So that's going to be a lot of work, too. One thing that's pretty cool, though, is I've started using JS docs to comment the code. And I think readme.io can kind of parse your whole GitHub repo and extract the API documentation from that. So that will save us a lot of work. So yeah, if all of these things can come together, like in the next couple weeks or months, I think we can have a pretty big release and relaunch and make a lot of noise. And then after that, I have a lot of ideas for side projects that can use Telescope to kind of like I did for Crunch Hunt, if some of you remember that, where I'm trying to use Telescope to build small side projects and use that to promote Telescope, like launching on Product Hunt, Hack and Use, and so on. So yeah, like I really started working seriously on Telescope maybe 1 year ago. It's when I introduced the theming stuff and the modularity and all that. And I'm hoping, like, yeah, for the 1 year anniversary, Telescope can really like go to the next level and become a much more usable, easier to build on, easier to understand. And yeah, I'm very excited. Like, we have, I think, 235 people in the Slack chat room, which is probably the biggest Meteor-related chat community right now. So I think Telescope is going to become a force to be reckoned with pretty soon. So thanks for watching. I might do another one of these Hangouts for European time zones. So if you missed this one, feel free to join. Even if you were able to watch this one, but you have questions and you want to ask them live, stay tuned and then come ask them for the next one. So thanks for watching. And if you're not already in the Slack chat room, come join us. There is a link on Telescope Meta. And talk to you soon. Bye.